The views and opinions expressed by the guests or hosts of this program do not necessarily reflect those of Divine Mercy Radio, Incorporated.
From the studios of Catholic 540 AM, Divine Mercy Radio, this is Meet the Priest. There are over 120 active diocesan and religious order priests in our listening area. Meet the Priest gives you the chance to learn more about these dedicated and interesting people.
Hello, fellow disciples. Welcome to Meet the Priest, the show where we sit down with the faithful shepherds who guide, inspire, and walk alongside us in our spiritual journeys. I'm your host, Mark Barata, and today we're honored to welcome back a familiar and beloved guest. He first joined us on July 24th, 2020, right in the heart of the COVID-19 pandemic, bringing words of hope and calm during uncertain times. And now, nearly 5 years later, we're delighted to have him with us again. For almost 25 years, he has faithfully served the Diocese of Raleigh, building communities, nurturing vocations, and bringing the presence of Christ to countless lives across eastern North Carolina. Please join me in welcoming back to Meet the Priest, Father Scott McCue, pastor of St. Michael the Archangel in Cary.
Hi, Mark. It's good to be with you. Thanks for the invitation to make my 5-year appearance on the show here today. So,
Father, let's start where the last interview ended. It's July 2020. COVID fears gripped the nation. You were pastor at St. Thomas More in Chapel Hill at that time, as well as dean of the Piedmont Deanery. What were some of the toughest decisions you and the diocese had to make during that time?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it was such uncertain times for us, and of course there was no playbook for any of this, right? So thankfully in Chapel Hill I had a lot of good people around me, advising me from a medical expert position, public health position, safety and security, to help us to develop a plan to get back to what was most important. That, of course, was the celebration of the Mass, right, of the heart of the parish. So I remember that, everything shut down like mid-March, and then we held the first outdoor Mass on Pentecost that year, and it was outside and back of the school on a field, and you can picture it, people brought their chairs with them, and they were spacing them apart, and then an altar set up, and then going into the stage of the school, there's like a small stairway with a balcony, and that became my ambo for a few months. It's great. And I remember that Mass that morning, it was windy, right? So that breath of the Holy Spirit there, and it was surreal, but it was so important and touching as well to be able to have some of my parishioners there together, and then to be able to worship together. Remember too, I bought a 10 or so white umbrellas like they do at the Vatican for like the communion station. So somebody would walk with a white umbrella with the communion minister and then going place to place. So we did that for the summer months. And then I remember saying we have to start to wake the church up, because the physical church was in use. So we started maybe with like adoration for a day, and then we began a weekday Mass, and then by September I think we were back in the church for a limited schedule of Sunday Masses, and people had to make reservations and all those kind of things, and and then the school as well. Actually, I remember St. Thomas More School was the only school in Chapel Hill in full operation for that school year from 2020 to 2021. It picked up a lot of students from public schools, and there was not one transmission of the virus. So all in all, surrounded myself with lots of good people, and key was keeping in touch, right? So we didn't have live streaming in mind before all of this, but we started it very rudimentary. I remember my first Sunday, I kind of put my iPhone there, and I messed up the settings so it was reversed, so the ambo was on the other side, and then my IT person, Sir, just said, I'll take care of it for him. And so then he's got iPad, but then in the church we invested during that time in cameras and new sound and everything. So that was one of the maybe better things to come out of the pandemic, is this live streaming that we do, right? To be able to preach the gospel in different ways. We want people to be in church, but for those who can't be there because of illness or being away, we have this ability now. We can push homilies out, all those kind of things. But what was most important, so in those times, was to stay in communication with our people through online means, and I did a bunch of videos, that kind of thing, and figuring out how do we best bring folks back together for the celebration of the Eucharist. So,
Looking back, how do you feel the Catholic Church responded overall to the challenges of the COVID pandemic?
I do think we responded well, both through our. I mean, again, there was no playbook for this. We had to figure out what to do. Obviously, we spend our lives trying to get people to come to church, then all of a sudden tell people don't come to church. So because we had to kind of reset and figure out we can't go on as usual, so we have to reset and figure out how do we best and most safely bring the Eucharist to people. So, and it was all the different kinds of thoughts on the mandates that were in place. But at least from my personal experience, I think bishops are trying to act with their best interests of their people in mind. And as we sort of had to pause and think, how do we best go about this in the future? So I think we responded well in that way. I remember too, we offered our parking lot in the church for one of the for COVID testing and vaccinations as well, and all those kind of things. So.
One last question about COVID, and we'll move on to more pleasant topics. Were there any surprising or hopeful moments in the midst of the crisis that you can recount?
Yeah, hopeful or surprising moments. I just think to be able to see the appreciation, the joy that people had when they were able to be there and be physically present for Mass. And I remember too, we, of course, this was in the midst of Lent and Holy Week, Easter, and like surreal celebrating the Triduum with like 10 people or something in our small chapel. But I remember preaching and saying, even though you aren't here, Easter is still here, right? Easter is still happening, being celebrated, even though we aren't together in church, but the promise of the resurrection does not fail. So,
amen. Mm-hmm. You are a native of New Jersey. What was it like growing up Catholic in New Jersey?
Oh, great. Good question. Yeah, so I'm a native of Elizabeth, New Jersey. So if you've ever been to Newark Airport, you've been to Elizabeth. Half of the airport's in Elizabeth. I tell you, I grew up between the oil refinery and the airport. So I never knew what the Garden State meant when I was going, like, where's this garden everybody talks about? But no, it was great. So I grew up at a great time. Being Elizabeth, my family and I were very much involved in the life of our parish community. So my vocation was born at St. Mary of the Assumption Parish in Elizabeth, New Jersey. The church is 180 years old, still there and going strong. And I went all through our parish Catholic school, elementary school and high school. And that really fostered my vocation. And a lot of what we did as life of the family was at the parish and centered around that. So there was this great Catholic culture and community as well. And and so actually my best friend is a priest. He's in the Archdiocese of Newark, New Jersey. We've known each other since first grade. So he was ordained a week before I was. So there really was this fostering of vocations there in that church.
Father Joseph Mancini, yes. I believe, of St. Stephen's Church in Kearney, New Jersey.
You've done your homework there. So
I've got a question for you about him in a little bit. Were there any people outside of Father Joseph who deeply influenced your faith?
Yeah. I don't know. I probably influenced his faith, but anyway, no. So it began in the family, of course. So my mom always that great. Inspiration, her example. I credit other priests with my vocation. So growing up at that time, 3 or 4 priests were in the parish, and a wide variety of priests, and I was able to experience that. And I think maybe I want to be who they are and do what they do as well. So there was a great priest, Monsignor Bob Slipe was his name. He passed away a few years ago, but he was in charge of liturgy in the parish and greatly influenced me and my friend Father Joe as well, to have this great love for the church's liturgical life. And, as altar servers and senior servers, and we were MCs for Holy Week, everything like that. So he and some other priests in the parish had that great influence on us, I think.
Okay, we have to ask, being you're from New Jersey, Taylor ham or Taylor pork roll?
It's called Taylor ham, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So don't call it pork roll. Those of us in the northern part of Jersey tend to say Taylor ham, yes.
Have you had any? It's starting to become more prevalent here in North Carolina now.
A former parishioner at Chapel Hill from time to time would bring me a whole Taylor ham, and I would have to take it to a friend's house with a deli slicer to be able to slice it and then freeze it and thing there, yeah. But you can get it at some places now. So
yeah. Any? I know it's more Philadelphia than New Jersey, but any affection for scrapple?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
No.
What exit off the turnpike?
13. So I grew up in the Bayway section of Elizabeth, which is right off. My house was just a few minutes away from exit 13. So
I was exit 9, New Brunswick.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned in the first interview, your best friend, who we've already alluded to, Father Joseph Mancini, pastor at St. Stephen's in Kearney, New Jersey. Do you have many opportunities to keep in touch with him? We
do. Actually, both of us do the Wordle every day, and he sends me the results, Wordle and connections, and usually he beats me. He's better than me. Any day that's a victory for me when I can beat him in both Wordle and connections. I happen to mention that in the text, so... But yeah, so that through texts and calls, and I'll visit there a few times here, come here. So he and another good priest friend of mine, Father Manny Rios, who's the pastor at my home parish, but was an associate there when I was in college. So we tend to visit each other. They like to come here. They were here when I was installed as pastor, and I'll have my 25th anniversary next year, so I'm sure they'll be here for that as well. But Father Joe is both pastor at the parish, you said. He's also the head of pontifical ceremonies for the archdiocese there. So all the liturgies with the cardinal there, is in charge of them. So we'll talk about liturgical matters too from time to time. So, in case you're just joining us, we're talking with Father Scott McCue, pastor of St. Michael the Archangel in Cary. This is Meet the Priest. You're an avid New York Yankees fan. I noticed on Father Mancini's bio, he's a fan of the New York Mets. How have you been able to set aside that rivalry and remain best of friends? Well, all I can say is I was raised properly. So I was raised as a Yankees fan. Yeah, I'm a diehard Yankees fan. And he was just raised a Mets fan. So he's a long-suffering Mets fan, and he was happy when they got Juan Soto this year, but that's not working out that well so far. Yeah, I was actually able to go to the World Series last year, right? So I had some friends of mine from Chapel Hill who always said, if the Yankees ever in the World Series again, I said, if ever, so they'll take me. And I had one day that on my schedule that I could go, and it worked out that they were at home that day playing. So I went to the World Series. Of course, the World Series didn't turn out all that great. We wanted it, but it was a great experience to be there. But the Yankee game was always on when I was growing up, right? So I have developed that great love. I am one of 4 kids, and my 3 of the 4 of us are Yankee fans. My older brother and Donnie, my sister Susan is. My other sister, Cary, she doesn't have much interest in baseball, but in fact, in my residence, in fact, I have a whole room devoted to the Yankees. So that's where all of my memorabilia is. So one of my goals is to go and see every baseball stadium in the country. So I've been to 20 of them, and so there's out of 30, so there's 10 more to go. So every year I pick one that I haven't been to so far, and then go and hopefully see the Yankees there, but they don't have to be playing there in order for me to go. What's next on that itinerary? Houston this year. So we'll go down to Houston. I think they may have changed the name of the park. I don't know. But anyway, the Yankees are in September, so spent a few days in Houston. So,
do you have a favorite Yankees team or moment in history?
Yeah, there's
so many.
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up with, well, at the time, really started following them with the era of Andy Pettitte and Jorge Posada, Derek Jeter, and Mariano Rivera. Those are the core four, as we call them. But those were the great days of the Yankees, right? When they started winning World Series again in the late '90s, there was that dynasty there. So I love when in '96 when Charlie Hayes caught the final out of the World Series and they won there, and then of course he loved it in 2000 when we beat the Mets in the World Series.
In 2009 you beat the Phillies.
And 2009 beat the Phillies. So I was at Cardinal Gibbons at the time. I was the priest there, and Bishop Burbage was the bishop, huge Phillies fan, and we had a wager on it. He lost, obviously, and so he had to come to Gibbons in a pinstripe Yankees jersey, and he brought tasty cakes, which are from Philadelphia, for the kids. But he was true to it. I have a picture of him in a pinstripe Yankees jersey. Yeah,
that's a great story.
Yeah.
Is there a particular player whose character or perseverance you find especially inspiring from a faith perspective?
From a faith perspective, I'd say if you think about Mariano Rivera, right? So he was the closer. For your listeners, the closer's job usually to get the last 3 outs of the game, right? He comes in to finish, and usually once Mariano came in, that was it. On a rare day would he blow a save. That happened in the World Series, as we know, once. But he was there to once Mo came in, you exhaled a little bit, right? Because you have a lot of faith and trust in him that he's going to do what his job is, right? So, and from that perspective of faith and trust, two key Christian principles. We have our faith in God, and we put our trust in Him. So, I've kind of made that correlation between them. So.
One last Yankees question before we move on. Have you ever referenced a Yankees moment in a homily?
As often as I can, yes. Yes, so I think in my first weekend here when I was introducing myself, I told people that they may hear Yankees references from time to time. On a rare occasion, I may make a Mets reference, but rare occasion. So,
do you have parishioners give you a hard time being Red Sox fans? Are you Mets fans or
a little bit? Yes, but Red Sox fans don't have much to talk about right now. But anyway, they're doing better this year. But as of late, they've not.
American League East is kind of surprising this year. Baltimore
Yankees,
suffering.
You have a long-suffering Baltimore fan. So the Yankees have a good lead right now, as of today, about 6 games.
6 games.
The East, so.
Changing topics, well, somewhat. Pope Leo XIV, he's a baseball fan, a fan of the Chicago White Sox. Mm-hmm. What was your initial reaction to his election?
Yeah, so I was in my car, actually. You hope to share these moments with other people. And I remember when Pope Francis was elected, I was in chapel. We all gathered around and put his computer screen to watch it. But I had just left my dean's visit in Wake Forest, and I said to Father Jeffrey there, maybe we'll get white smoke soon. Then I got in the car and I was listening to the Catholic channel, I think, and all of a sudden it was white smoke. So it was like an hour and 15 minutes too between when we saw the smoke and when they announced it, right? Because I think Pope Leo was writing down what he wanted to say and greeting the cardinals. So I was at a traffic light turning into a shopping center to meet some people for lunch, and we began to announce in Latin the name, and Robert Francis. I said, it's the American, right? So, and I said, I kind of screamed a little bit, it's the American. Of course, he was talked about, but simply, isn't it interesting that he was kind of ruled out because he was born in the United States, but now it's become obvious why he was elected as Pope. But so once we got over the shock of that, right, of an American being elected Pope, we could then focus on what he was actually saying and doing. So, but isn't it kind of weird for us to hear a Pope speak,
In English.
with a Midwestern accent. Of course, other Pope, Pope Francis, English was his hardest language, so he would really, he wouldn't even speak much in English because it was hard for him. Of course, when Pope Benedict, his German accent, John Paul II had really good English with his Polish accent, but to hear a Pope speak to us flawlessly in our native language, it takes a little bit big of getting used to. So yeah.
What do you think having an American Pope will do for the Catholic Church in North Carolina and the United States as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's a real moment of pride for us as American Catholics, right? That one of our own has been raised to the papacy, someone whose early years were formed at his parish church in Chicago, and then how he responded to that call to be a missionary so hopefully there is a little bit of renewal, right, of our faith, and of those who might be more interested in the faith. Overall, we've seen this huge growth in the last couple of years of those wanting to join us in the fullness of the Catholic faith. And maybe with this, there will be even more as this kind of people look into Pope Leo and we really listen to him. I think especially when he speaks in English, right? We'll have more people listening. Hopefully that will lead to bigger things.
I know I'm hopeful that he'll visit the United States. Pope Francis, I guess, was the last pope to visit in 2015.
And I think it will happen. It will take a while. I mean, he's not going to make his first apostolic journey to the United States. But I think in time, of course, the Holy Father will visit. This will be what we assume is a very long pontificate. So I think within that time, there'll be a number of apostolic visits, I would hope.
Again, if you're just joining us, this is Meet the Priest, and our guest today is Father Scott McCue, pastor of St. Michael the Archangel. And Cary, you have been at St. Michael for close to a year after 13 at St. Thomas More in Chapel Hill. How has that transition gone for you?
Yeah, it's been good overall. It was a long time to be in one place, right, at St. Thomas More, and 13 years. Then when I was at Gibbons for 4 years, I helped there on the weekends. And when I was ordained, I was ordained in St. Thomas More, and it was my first parish as parochial vicar for a year. So, a long tenure there. But, we serve at the pleasure of our bishop, and he asked me to come here to St. Michael. And I was feeling a year more before I left Chapel Hill that it was time to go, right? I felt I done what I could do there, and Lord was asking something new of me. So, and then I was blessed to be able to come here to St. Michael. Whenever I would come here, like to visit or for Mass, I said, it might be nice to be pastor here someday. And then, lo and behold, that opportunity came up. And so kind of stepping into a new place, a new land, you have to learn everything all over again, right? So you have to learn who's who and what's what. You have to set your systems up. You have to experience everything once. So now I'm at the end of I've been through almost a whole year of the life of our parish community. So what does that mean? Well, I've been able to experience all of our major
events.
Events, all of our liturgies. I know what Advent's like here. I know what Lent is like. I don't have to ask, well, what was done like for Lent before, what was done for the Easter Vigil, that kind of thing. So I have all of that kind of memory now. And I think going into the second year, I can now begin to, with the help of those around me, to begin to form a vision for the life of the parish community. Because I've been able to look and study and see and talk to people and all those sorts of things. But any time any of us move to a new place physically, we have to get used to a new place and new people and new area. I never knew Cary was so big, right? Because my only experience of Cary really was coming to St. Michael, so I knew about High House Road and Preston in this area here, but kind of been able to explore all these different areas that are here to be able to see where all the different stories are in movie theaters and all those kind of things. But this is a really wonderful. It's a big parish community, right? We're the largest parish of the diocese.
Yeah, 5,400 families.
It's probably a little more than that by now. But
in St. Thomas More, you had 3,100. What are some of the
that.
challenges of leading parishes that large?
Right, yeah. So when you lead parishes that large, key is you have to put the right people around you, right? So here at St. Michael's, I was blessed to come in with a good staff here, and Father Michael, our Vicar General, was the pastor before me. He was doing both jobs for a couple of years, and that was hard. So, and the bishop asked him to go full time in the work of the Vicar General. So I have really good staff around me. And so a parish like this, a pastor cannot do it on his own. You have to have smart people who do a lot of the business and operational aspects of it. So I have a director of operations, Danielle, who oversees all of our day-to-day operations of the parish and oversees the finances, that kind of thing. I have a Carolyn, who's my director of pastoral services. So she's oversees basically things to do with our mission. So three pillars of the mission: worship, education, and service. So she oversees those, and Danielle kind of gives her everything she needs to do those jobs. So, and then we have a host of other staff members. It's a small chancery in some places, but that allows me to focus on what I need to do as the pastor, right? So it's myself, and then I have right now two other priests with me full time. So Father Alapati and Father John de Guzman. Father John is being transferred to Newburgh, but Father Tom Tully is coming. So we can focus on on the priestly tasks that we have, and then I, as pastor, and I serve as Dean of Raleigh now too. So having that good staff around me allows me to focus on those other things. So you always get a challenge in a big parish. How do you make a big parish small, right? Because how do you make it so that people feel connected? So we have things, small groups are part of that. So we have the Reach More groups through the Evangelical Catholic organization that strives to create that fellowship and that small groups where people can explore their faith more and more. Through the different groups, ministries.
70 different ministries here at St. Michael's, over 70.
Yes, through all those different groups, ministries, and organizations, you're able to hopefully find a niche here somehow, right? So we say it's something for everybody, and if there isn't, you can always propose something new, right? I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but if someone says, "Hey, Father, I have this great idea," wonderful. First, I say, send it to me in writing, and then I take it to my senior staff, maybe the pastoral council as well, to kind of see, does that make sense for the life of our parish? So, but it takes a lot of people to make this place, work every day, and but I enjoy it, and
I suspect your 13 years handling everything at St. Thomas More has been a big aid to your transition.
So
here.
everything's been a stepping stone, right? So from my 1 year as an associate in Chapel Hill, and then I was the pastor at St. Anne's Parish in Johnston County in Clayton, 5 years. Small parish that got bigger, 500 families when I went there. 5 years later, it was 1,000. It's huge now. So that helped me, and then 4 years at Gibbons in school administration as a assistant principal for spiritual life, and that helped here, having a school in Chapel Hill, having a school here. And then, 13 years in Chapel Hill and with a similar structure, and built upon that, then to be able to come here to do the best I can as the pastor. So.
This next question might seem somewhat loaded. You're working for your third bishop, having served for Bishops Gossman, Burbage, and now Zarama. Mm-hmm. What have you found to be more challenging, getting a new parish or getting a new boss?
I wonder if the bishop's listening now, but so I've been blessed with all those bishops, right? I think each has had his own unique style, and each I've worked with well, because I worked in different aspects of the diocesan administration with each, whether it's through priest personnel or as a dean. So I think we as a priest, when a new bishop comes in, we listen to him. We figure out his style, what he needs, and then we adapt that. So it's very different working with Bishop Luis Raphael than it was with Bishop Burbage. But I've had good relationships with each of them, and I think our diocese, if you think about the long history of our diocese, we've been so blessed with our bishops, right? And with longevity of bishops as well. And I think each has been good to work with, and I'm just happy to serve each bishop as best I can.
Catholic education has played an integral role in your evolution as a priest. You grew up in Catholic schools for 4 years, as you mentioned earlier. You served as assistant principal for spiritual life at Cardinal Gibbons High School. You currently sit on the board of directors. Both St. Michael the Archangel and St. Thomas More, as you alluded to, have sizable school enrollments. In your view, what sets Catholic education apart from other educational models, especially in today's world?
Yeah, I think it's what I said actually at our graduation mass last week. I mean, Christ is the reason that the school exists here, right? So, and that we were able to integrate faith into all the different disciplines that we teach here. So faith, our belief in Christ, is that guiding principle that is weaved, I guess is the word, through all the different parts of our curriculum. Catholic schools play a huge role in ultimately forming disciples. That's what we want when somebody graduates from one of our schools, that they've learned a bit about what discipleship is. So, Catholic schools have a long history in our country. Thankfully, we're in a diocese where Catholic education is strong and vibrant and
growing.
We're not having to make hard decisions to close Catholic schools, but there's a demand for Catholic education.
How do you, as a pastor, stay connected to the life of the school and its students?
Good, yeah. So we have Mass with our students every other week. So usually I'll have that Mass every other week. And then, I randomly walk through this school. It's isn't scheduled really, but when I see I have an hour on my calendar, so I'll just pop into every classroom if I can and kind of see what's going on with the life of the students there. If I can make the carpool at the end of the day, but also I will specifically be scheduled to do things, whether it's with our preschool or the big school as we call it. I'll be requested to maybe be at a certain event or address a certain topic. One role that Father John de Guzman has had is as the chaplain to the school, so really heavily involved with the school. And Father Tom was coming to replace him. He'll have that specific role as well. Just I wish I had more time to spend with the school, but so I do what I can, and I happily respond to requests when I receive them as well.
As mentioned, Catholic schools in the Diocese of Raleigh have experienced remarkable enrollment increases, and this sustained increase has prompted the diocese to explore establishing new high schools. As a matter of fact, a new Catholic high school in Cary plans to open in fall of 2028. Mm-hmm. To what do you attribute the phenomenal growth?
I think it's partly has to do with the growth of the area. Obviously, the Triangle is a very desirable area for people to move into. But I think too the vibrancy of the Catholic faith here, right? With our Catholic parishes, and people come here and find what they're looking for. They find some kind of nourishment of their faith, and as a result of that, we have these vibrant schools as well. Yeah. So how wonderful is it that we're talking about opening schools rather than closing them, right? Colonel Gibbons, I was on the board helping to make a decision on this, to be able to help start a new Catholic high school, right? That within 3 years, because we were able to purchase an existing school building, to be able to say we're going to have this new ready-made high school in 3 years, so that we can have this greater opportunity for Catholic education.
You were the coordinator of the first ever Eucharistic Congress for the Diocese of Raleigh in 2023 October. Mm-hmm. It was attended by around 5,000 people, with a deliberate intent to include members of youth groups from different parishes around the diocese. Reflect on the impact of the youth's presence, if you will.
That's great. Yeah, so the Eucharistic Congress, we knew when we started planning it that we wanted to have a youth track for it, and so that we could bring together youth from all over our diocese as part of this Congress to begin the centennial celebration. So we lined up speakers for that and worked with the Office of Evangelization and Discipleship to figure out how to go about this. And I remember, I was always monitoring the amount of people coming, right? Because I knew how many people we could fit in the convention center, and they have very strict rules and fire codes and everything. So, I don't know, a couple of weeks before, it was 4,000 something. And then I was on a plane, and I turned my phone back on, and I got the latest report, and it was like 5,000 something. I'm like, we don't have enough seats. What are we going to do? And most of those were youth. Because why? Because, as you know, in youth ministry, people kind of register towards the end. So we had this huge spike. Well, we figured out what to do in terms of, we had another room we could use and have anybody who, registered after the deadline or came that day, they would have a live stream going into that room. But it was just great to see, all those buses pulling up and youth there and coming in that spirit that the young church has, and that great love and appreciation for Christ, who is present in the Eucharist. So the fact that we were able to gather, I forget the exact number, but it was over 1,000, maybe 1,100, 1,200 youth from across our diocese here, to come together with 4,000 others to open that 100th anniversary of our diocese, and really to celebrate what we believe is that real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Mm-hmm.
How do you follow up an event like the Eucharistic Congress, and are you aware of any discussions along those lines?
You mean for another Eucharistic Congress? Or people ask me that on the day of, like, oh, this is great. When's the next one? I said, well, I knew what it took to put on that one. And at that time, the diocese didn't have any plans for another one. As far as I'm aware, there's no plans. Now, some dioceses do like an every year kind of thing. But knowing what it took, I said, I think there will be one in the future at some point, whenever the bishop decides going to have another one. And now we know what it's like, we know what it takes, and we have the framework for it. But I think the follow-up is this. So if you remember, one of the most touching moments of the Congress was at the opening in the morning, when the bishop walked in with a monstrance, right, and the incense, everything. And that monstrance was the centennial monstrance that was then sent to every parish throughout the diocese that year, to have a holy hour, ever it was. And the bishop's mandate for the year was to take Jesus to the people, right? So in our churches and in our homes and neighborhoods, a month or so before I left Chapel Hill, we had this Eucharistic procession in a mobile home community, Chapel Hill. And I was riding on a trailer, back of a truck, with the monstrance, and sometimes holding on for dear life because of the bumps and everything. But we stopped at 4 or 5 homes along the way and just did the Eucharistic blessing, and there it was. So there we were taking Christ out to people. This coming Friday here at St. Michael, we'll have our second Eucharistic procession, where we're going to bring the monstrance from the church across High House Road into Bond Park, which is directly across the street, and there's an amphitheater there. So that idea of, taking Christ into the public square. In the year of Eucharistic Revival, I think there was a lot of great things, come from it. Whether it was the Eucharistic Congress, or these, here at St. Michael, we did like home adoration in different people's homes, or the Eucharistic miracle displays that that are available, that people can see how Christ is working through the Eucharist, not only for nourishment, but for that healing of people, and as a means for people to deepen their belief in Him.
As you mentioned, the Eucharistic Congress kicked off the 100th anniversary celebration of the diocese. You've been here for almost 25 of those. Why don't you reflect on what you have seen since your arrival back in 2001?
Yeah, so interesting I say that. I've been here for a quarter of the diocese history. So as a priest, almost 25 years next year, and then as a seminarian even longer than that. I remember being an altar server as a seminarian for the diocese 75th anniversary, which was at the Crown Coliseum down in Fayetteville. So I just think back upon the tremendous growth that we've had as a diocese, right? To see the number of our parishioners increasing, to see the number of our churches increasing, to see how here in Eastern North Carolina we are, proclaiming the gospel in both in word and in action as well. I remember with wonderful sentimentality and fondness becoming a seminarian of the diocese. I started out as a seminarian for my home archdiocese in Newark, but felt the call elsewhere and became associated with the Diocese of Raleigh. And I was invited to come and to do a little bit of a tour with the vocations committee. And in those days, I was given a car and a map, like a physical map, and I had to go around to all these different parts to interview with people and speaking with the vocations committee and with Bishop Gosman ultimately, and the bishop who ordained me, and we that great love that Bishop Gosman had for his people here, and for our diocese as well, his simplicity, his humility as well, and he's a bishop ultimately that saw fit to lay hands on me, and then we saw. Then he served the diocese for over 30 years. I remember as a priest when we had our priest retreat one year, and it was his last year, and he said, I'm here to give my farewell address. It took Rome a long time to name a replacement. So the following year, he was still the bishop. He says, I'm here to give my second annual farewell address to you. So he did that. But then, with the appointment of Bishop Burbage as Bishop of Raleigh and all that brought to us excitement anytime someone new comes in. Who Bishop Burbage, who faithfully led our diocese of Raleigh for 10 years and built the cathedral as well. And then with the appointment of Bishop Luis and all that he's brought to our
diocese,
to our diocese, as well as as our shepherd, and him being appointed here. That was kind of interesting because he was actually after being named Bishop of Raleigh, he was at the dedication of his own cathedral. He said, I wonder if that's ever happened before, right? So he was there. But, Bishop Luis always reminds us of that love that God has for us. And that's kind of that's his Episcopal motto, right? That God is love. That he as our shepherd stands and reminding us that no matter what, that love of God is always there for us.
A couple last questions. Yeah. By chance, do you miss New Jersey at all?
Do I miss New Jersey? No, when I go back to visit, I have a sister who still lives there. My friends. No, I say this is here in the Triangle is where I'm meant to be. It's very different. Where I grew up, it's very urban, and it's a different way of life, different culture. It was great for me growing up. I loved it, but this is where home is now. When my mom retired, I was the pastor in Smithfield, so she moved to Smithfield, and that's where she lives now still. So, this is home for us. So, yeah.
Any final words you'd like to share with the community or those getting to know you for the first time?
Well, I just am appreciative of the opportunity to have to speak with you and to just to be able to share my thoughts on priesthood, on my life here as a priest of this diocese. I'm just blessed that God led me here, right, from where I grew up to become associated with the Diocese of Raleigh, to be ordained for here, and then to have just served all these different parish communities and schools where I've been. So to look back on my priestly life, I can really see how God has been at work and how I've been blessed as well, in all of those places, in all the work that the priestly work that I've been entrusted with.
As we wrap up today's episode of Meet the Priest, we want to extend our heartfelt thanks to Father Scott McCue of St. Michael the Archangel for joining us once again and sharing such honest, faith-filled reflections. From navigating a global pandemic to serving the Diocese of Raleigh for nearly 25 years, his ministry reminds us of the strength, compassion, and unwavering hope that the priesthood brings to our communities, especially in times of uncertainty. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Catholic 540 Divine Mercy Radio. Whether you're hearing this on the air or catching the replay online or the app, we're grateful for your presence. And just a reminder to check out our first interview with Father McCue from July 24th, 2020, that can be found on the Meet the Priest tab under the local programs on the app. Be sure to join us next time as we continue to meet the men behind the collar, those who walk with us in faith, service, and love. I am your host, Mark Barata. Until then, may God bless you and keep you.